night. The price of petrol will go up by 96 cents a litre and diesel by 74 cents. Paraffin will go up by 73 cents. The main reason for the fuel price hike is the average increase in the price of crude oil as well as the rand-dollar exchange rate. Social media users are still taking to Twitter and Facebook to share pictures of the Muizenberg fire that is now in its third day. Firefighters from other provinces are to be dispatched to the Cape Peninsula to help contain the blaze, where around 4,000 hectares have been burnt. Authorities have also warned the fires could take a few days to extinguish.
We've got 4 helicopters working on fire, helicopters flying. We've got 1 Defence Force helicopter flying. We've also had 2 fixed-wing bombers at this stage that we got in that assisting us. Spotter plane, that's the small plane high up in the sky that's doing the coordination and control.
The High Court in Pretoria will deliver judgment in Khulubuse Zuma's urgent application against Aurora Empowerment Systems today. The application seeks to nullify an earlier ruling on a creditor's claim of about 1.5 billion rand against Aurora and its directors. The Master of the High Court found Aurora and its directors liable for the stripping of assets at bankrupt mines in Orkney and Springs. Mark Shuttleworth's battle for 250 million rand will play out in the Constitutional Court this morning. The South African entrepreneur wants the Reserve Bank to repay the amount he was charged to move money out of the country. Last year, the Supreme Court of Appeal agreed that the 250 million was an unlawful tax and ordered the Reserve Bank to pay back the money with interest. The final results of the Lesotho's poll could be known today. Prime Minister Tom Tabane remains in the lead with 40 of the 80 constituencies won so far. Tabane's All Basotho convention is followed by the opposition, the Democratic Congress, who has won 33 constituencies. And then just taking a look at the cricket, of course, the Proteas have been batting first. I'll leave you now with Evan, who gives you the latest score update there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine. If I look at the live pictures, another 6 has just been hit by David Miller there. You have 393 for the loss of 4 wickets in the final over. There, it looks like another boundary. 400 on the cards, very much. It looks like, of course, Hashim Amla earlier scored 159. With another 100 also scored by Faf du Plessis at the moment at the crease. David Miller, you see there, well, we're losing the length. David Miller on 39 of 21 with Riley Rousseau, who's just gone to 50 of 27. So 396 for 4 now. South Africa batting first and doing very, very well. But top story here, firefighters from other provinces are to be dispatched now to the Cape Peninsula to help contain the blaze there. Working on fire says it's been an extremely difficult 48 hours for firefighters. Authorities say the fires could take a few days to extinguish.
Working tirelessly to douse the flames. More than 200 firefighters have been battling the blaze since Sunday morning. Working on fire, the Table Mountain National Park, Volunteer Wildlife Services and the City of Cape Town are all pitching in to assist. Fanned by strong winds, it's unclear how the fire started.
We've got 4 helicopters working on fire, helicopters flying. We've got 1 Defence Force helicopter flying. We've also had 2 fixed-wing bombers at this stage that we got in that assisting us. Spotter plane, that's the small plane high up in the sky that's doing the coordination and control.
Dozens of residents at a retirement village in Noordhoek were treated for smoke inhalation. 5 homes have been destroyed in the area, as well as a guest house at the foot of Chapman's Peak. Scores were evacuated from their homes.
The whole mountain was just ablaze. It looked very pretty, but very sad to see. It was a long line right across this whole ridge.
These guys they're the heroes. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have our homes. I mean, the fire's been right here, right on our doorstep.
3 mass care centres have been set up to accommodate displaced people in Fish Hoek. Members of the public have sprung into action, dropping off donations for those affected and food parcels for weary firefighters. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Cape Town.
Well, now for the very latest on the fire, we cross to our reporter Vanessa Puna. She's got a guest, but before you go into the interview, Vanessa, it's been a tough time for firefighters. What's the latest?
Eben, yes, it has been a tough few days for firefighters battling this raging mountain fire in the South Peninsula. Over 200 have been deployed since Sunday, and at the moment we've just learned that there's still about between 150 to 160 crew on the ground here. At the moment we're in Newlands at the Newlands fire base. The temperatures, I must just say, seem to be soaring. Eben, it's sweltering hot here today. Luckily at this point the wind hasn't picked up as yet, which could possibly assist in the firefighting efforts. We do know that we've spoken to the fire manager of the Table Mountain National Parks, who's also my guest today, earlier saying that there are 3 areas of concern for them at this point. So, Mr. Prince, you talked about 3 areas of concern this morning. If you could just take us through exactly what those 3 areas are.
Yeah, the 3 areas that's of main concern to us is the areas between Ou Kaapseweg and Glo Valley Golf Course. That's the one area. The second area is above Tokai Forest. There's a section where the fire actually moved into the plantation. And the third area that's a concern to us is the slopes above Hout Bay. That's the 3 areas that we're going to concentrate on today.
We've heard that this fire is almost being compared to the huge one we've seen 15 years ago in 2000, and that one raged on for about 9 days. At this stage, can you speculate or estimate how long it will take before we can put this one out?
Yeah, you're dead right. Actually, the pattern, if you look at the way that this fire is burning, it's more or less the same as in 2000. And we're not going to put this fire out, today or tomorrow. So it's still going to continue. As I said, it's still actively burning. And my estimate is another 2 to 3 days maybe. It's still going to continue. And after that, we will start doing mopping up operations.
Now, we know that we've seen this kind of mountain fires happening, specifically this time of year in the Cape, when the temperatures are in the mid-30s, of course, accompanied by, the roaring southeaster. I know it's still early days, but the cause of this fire, can you speculate around that?
Well, we haven't investigated the exact cause of this fire. The fire actually started quite high up Boys Drive in an area known as Peck's Valley. But, it's very difficult. Table Mountain National Park is a park within an urban environment. It's an open access park. It's not like any other park that's fenced off, so there's a lot of people moving in and out of the park.
So it's not easy to say at this point whether it is caused by human negligence, but you did say there is a high percentage of human negligence causing these fires, these kind of fires.
Yes, no, definitely. Especially in our case, I would say more than 90% or 99% of our fires within this area is caused by human negligence.
And can we also at this stage just estimate how large this fire is in terms of hectares?
Roughly, we're looking at between 3,000 and 4,000 hectares at this stage.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Prince. That's Philip Prince, the fire manager for Table Mountain National Parks, Eben, saying that firefighters really do have their hands full for at least another few days or so, with extra crew being brought in from as far afield as the Eastern Cape, Northwest, etc. And he says this is not the kind of fire that will be put out within a day or two. So they still have quite a bit of work on their hands before we see the end of this fire raging here in the South Peninsula.
Vanessa, before you go, tough work expected. I saw temperatures are expected to rise around 40 degrees today. Is that accurate?
Eben, judging by the way the sweat happens to be dripping off my brow, I think that is quite accurate. I think that the temperatures are set to be anywhere between 34 and 37 degrees today, and we are really feeling it here. It's still early yet, but in Newlands, where we are at the helipad at the Newlands fire base, it definitely is sweltering. So we can expect temperatures to climb at least, more by midday. So yes, a spare thought for the poor firefighters, really doing an amazing job by keeping this fire in check.
And it was very nice to see how Cape Townians have stepped into the breach, offering support and also, dropping off parcels and the like for those fighting the fires.
Yes, early this morning we were out at Hout Bay Central as well. People just absolutely rallying around the firemen and women who are working tirelessly. Also here at the Newlands fire base just now, we've seen people coming in with boxes of goods, people coming in bringing water, juice. So Cape Townians are really rallying around these firemen and women who are working tirelessly, Eben. And as you've just heard Mr. Prince saying, it's not one of those vuurtjies, as he called them. It's still going to be quite a bit of work to bring this fire under control.
Vanessa, thank you for your sterling efforts. Hot work there today. I can see you really sweating. All of the best, and we hope that even you get a bit of relief there. Vanessa Puna doing excellent work there at the helipad in Newlands, at Newlands Forest. Really, as you can see, the fire is still out of control. It's got most of the Cape Peninsula engulfed. A lot of people being evacuated and a lot of damage to property and, well, the local flora there in the area. I can just give you a quick update. I've just seen South Africa's innings conclude. 411 for the loss of 4 wickets. Hashim Amla got 159. Faf du Plessis got 109. South Africa, that's a World Cup record, by the way. So South Africa look odds on to put one over Ireland and move a step closer to the knockout stages. But let's get back to the pick of the day. Of course, it's very much got to do with the fire there. And this is what that fire looks like from out of space. This is a Google sent up by Petalzili Pantry. That's the fire seen from space. As you can see, the wind is pushing the smoke, the plume of smoke offshore. That's right on the Cape Peninsula. As you know, very mountainous terrain, which makes the job of firefighters doubly difficult as they're battling the blaze there in Cape Town. Let's now take a look at your tweets. At SABC Newsroom, of course, is where we ask you to send your tweets, and very much to do with the fire. Yeah, Kim Kilpatrick said, with reports of 40-degree weather today, my heart goes out to all the brave firefighters working on the Muizenberg fire. #heroes. That's the sentiment shared by all of us here in South Africa. Look at that marvelous picture. It tells a story of the scale of the blaze. That is RSA Politics saying, top story, the extent of music is unreal. There you have that Twitter pic. You can, of course, see more. That is right above Muizenberg. That's sort of the Westlake area. View from our window this morning in Muizenberg. As you can see, Boys Drive, that's above Boys Drive. Here you have close-ups. The Motomia team is wishing the firemen a safe battle today. Talking about the Muizenberg fire, there you have another picture from last night. How wildfires work. Africa Shares. Of course, there you can go and have a look at them. As it were, some people say it's a good thing. Nature needs fire in order to regenerate. Others saying we are losing property. We need to get on top of this blaze. Of course, the authorities say they expect this scenario to play out for a couple of days still to come. Time now for us to get a little update on what's happening in Lesotho. The final results of the poll there could be known today. This after significant progress was made in the vote counting process yesterday. Only 4 constituencies must still be declared. So far, Prime Minister Tom Tabane's party, the ABC, leads with 40 constituencies. Pagalita Mosisi's DC has 33, while the LCD and BMP has 2 and 1 respectively there.
Free, fair, transparent and credible, but the security issue remains a key concern for SADC.
I was present when the facilitator, His Excellency Deputy President Ramaphosa of South Africa, met with the head of the general who is now leading the Defence Force, who recommitted himself to serving the government of the day under whoever that the people of Lesotho would have decided upon through this election process.
The Commonwealth says Lesotho is in a position to break from the past cycles of political violence.
We call on all Basotho to sustain the positive spirit of peace, tolerance, and commitment to democratic values.
Observer missions have advised Lesotho to implement constitutional reforms as soon as the new government is inaugurated. Mission heads of SADC, AU, and the Commonwealth have implored all stakeholders to accept the outcomes of the elections or challenge them within the provisions of the law of the country. Yolisa Njamela, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Our team, they're still in Lesotho. You can get more updates on the polls. Of course, more results expected a little bit later today. From 10 onwards, we'll be live in Lesotho with more updates. Time now for us to take a look at what is happening elsewhere in the world. We start with the Washington Post, with a picture of supporters of Russia's opposition movement marching in Moscow over the weekend. The march was in memory of Russian opposition leader and former Deputy Prime Minister Boris Nemtsov. He was gunned down on a heavily secured bridge near the Kremlin late on Friday. We move to the United Kingdom, and the search continues for the missing 16-year-old Rebecca Watts. The Times reporting this morning that 2 people have been arrested on suspicion of her murder in that country. Then, can China hope to turn the nation's soccer team into winners with help from Britain's strength in the sport? Well, we've lost it there now, but that's the question by the South China Morning Post after a meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prince William, who reportedly found common ground through an interest in the great game of football. Let's now take a look at what's happening across our country here in South Africa. We start in the courts in Johannesburg. Mark Shuttleworth's battle for 250 million rand will play out in the Constitutional Court this morning. In the Pretoria High Court, judgment is expected in an urgent application by Kulubusi Zuma to have claims of over 1.5 billion rand against Aurora Empowerment System set aside. Back in Johannesburg, Counter and Finance MEC Barbara Creasy will present her 2015-16 budget, and then tonight in Johannesburg, Wits will hold a discussion on xenophobia in general. That's what's on today. Time for us to take a break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
Healthy food is not always the cheapest food option, and so making the healthy choices the easier choices remain a health challenge for South African children.
Bipolar disorder is said to affect 1 in 100 people.
Low back pain, the most common spinal disorder, affects about 8 out of 10 people at some point in their lives.
Back pain persists for more than a week or 2. Seek advice.
I'm Dr. Cyril Musdau. Watch Health Talk every Saturday on SABC.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Amnesty International has painted a worrying picture of ongoing human rights abuses in their 2014-15 yearly report released last week. The report highlights human rights abuses in Africa and around the world. Suppression of dissent is said to be on the rise in South Africa and SADC countries like Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Angola and Mozambique. All forms of violence also came under scrutiny, such as violence against refugees and foreigners, the shooting of minors in Marikana, harassment in general, intimidation, and the prosecution of people within communities, and discriminatory violence against sexual minorities. Now, to unpack this report, we have Noel Kudutwa, who's the Deputy Director of Amnesty International here in South Africa. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Please give us the overall picture of this report, especially in Southern Africa.
Yes, globally, what Amnesty International found in its report is that there is a changing face of crisis. That crisis, whereas in the past wars will be between 2 countries, now wars are between countries, between nations, and between nationals in a particular country. And in Southern Africa, generally, we've seen the suppression of dissent, and we've seen more suppression of freedom of expression, assembly, and association, where people are finding it more and more difficult to gather, to meet and to call their governments to account.
In your report, you place South Africa on a same plane pretty much as countries like Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Angola and Mozambique. We have this wonderful constitution underpinned by human rights principles and this culture of human rights. What is it then that we are doing wrong here in South Africa?
The constitution is indeed wonderful, and it guarantees many of the fundamental human rights, and that's a very strong point that South Africa has. Unfortunately, when it comes to implementing some of those human rights, South Africa is getting it wrong in a number of areas. And one of the areas that's highlighted in the report is the Marikana Commission of Inquiry, for example, which is yet to be concluded, but now is at a stage where Judge Falam and the other commissioners are putting together the final report for submission to President Zuma. What came out of the hearings is that the police used excessive force in dealing with the protest action more than 2 years ago. And in dealing with that excessive force, unlawful orders were made, resulting in the killing of the 34 miners. We also see in the area of refugees and asylum seekers where excessive force is also being used, where violence that's being meted against them, there's inadequate protection by the police. So where force and violence is meted against foreign-owned shops, the police are not quick to come and rescue them and to protect them. So that's another key finding we find in South Africa.
How do you then view the South African police and the work that they are doing here in South Africa?
The South African police, we acknowledge that they're under a lot of pressure, that some of the conditions that they're operating in are not the best. The salaries, the terms and conditions are not the best, and even the command structures are also not the best. But that does not give an excuse for the violation of rights. The problem we see is that human rights and policing and maintaining international standards of policing are not being maintained. And the police are using excessive force, and when they use excessive force, they are not being held to account. So there are a number of cases where the police in South Africa have used force, and there are no prosecutions at all. They are not being held accountable. And we saw recently, about a month ago, after the lootings that happened in Soweto, where police officers also participated in the looting. And as of today, there's no action that's been taken against those police officers. Or if there is action that's been taken, that hasn't been publicized.
What has been the response from the South African government and then from the other governments, especially in Southern Africa, to this report that you've released?
The response, unfortunately, has been denial and to reject what Amnesty International has said and to simply not take responsibility for some of the findings that we've had. The South African authorities, however, have acknowledged in the area of maternal health, which is another area that Amnesty has highlighted in its report, that there are problems when it comes to accessing maternal health care for those who are marginalized and those who are poor. And the South African authorities have in fact responded positively and have put in place some mechanisms to try and address that. And a very good example is the Mom Connect, which was set up quite recently to allow women and young girls access to information during pregnancy. So in some instances there are some positives, in some instances there are no positives. In Angola, for instance, the authorities have simply dismissed the report and they've said there's no basis or there's no truth in that report, something which of course we deny.
Now you've put all these acts of violence and disorder out there in the public arena. What do you as Amnesty International, what would you like to see and what would you recommend or put forward as a solution?
We would want to see governments owning up to the human rights obligations that they've signed up to. We started off with the South African Constitution and the acknowledgement that the South African Constitution protects rights and it provides for the protection of fundamental rights. And what we would want to see, over and above what the Constitution provides, the South African government also has signed up to a number of international treaties and conventions, which also places international obligations on the country to ensure that those rights are fulfilled. An example is in the area of asylum seekers and refugees or foreign-owned shops or foreign nationals who are in South Africa. What we would like to see is what happened in 2010 during the World Cup, where mechanisms were put in place to ensure that there was no violence against refugees or asylum seekers. And that mechanism was effective because we didn't have a problem during that time. And what we want to see is a call to that same mechanism where there's a top-down approach right from the president, making it very clear that these things are not tolerated and should not, in fact, be tolerated, and sending that trickle-down message all the way down to the police officers to protect foreign nationals.
Amnesty International, how do you see this playing out in the rest of Africa as far as the image of South Africa as the nation of Nelson Mandela? How do other Africans view us today?
South Africa's image is taken a battering, regrettably. And as you rightly say, as the nation of Nelson Mandela, when President Mandela was the president, he made it very clear that South Africa's whole ethos will be based on human rights, not only the domestic issues on South Africa, but also South Africa's foreign policy would be determined by human rights. We have seen going back on those promises and on those stances that had been taken, and we don't see South Africa taking that leadership role anymore on the continent. And South Africa has always been seen as a strategic country, not only on the continent but globally, with a leadership role, with a clear role to play. And regrettably, that leadership role seems to be lost, and South Africa is not playing up to what is expected of it.
I thank you for joining us today. That's Noel Katutua, who's the Deputy Director of Amnesty International here in South Africa, talking about the worrying picture of ongoing human rights abuses in their yearly report that was released last week in the whole of Southern Africa and also the wider world. But let's have a look at your tweets. What are you talking about? What are you worrying about this morning? Mumsy says cheap politics is causing low voter turnout directly or indirectly. Time to revalue the price of a vote in an open market. Talking about the Lesotho elections, of course, results are expected to be pretty final a little bit later today. You'll have it right here on this channel. The question of leadership succession have to be answered by both the ABC and DC, as old dudes are going to serve the last term. Mpu Ramatlapeng says, should Parliament Amen electoral law introduce a two-party system if veterans of 20 plus years poll 17? This is a joke, talking about the Lesotho elections. And Charles Fogelman says, although Mosisili knows better than anyone that it's possible to win a plurality of seats, votes and lose the election. Of course, it's 40 to 33 at the moment. I think there are still a couple of constituencies that need to be counted there. Now, let's take a look at what's on Newsroom's Facebook page. Go there and like it. We'd love to interact with you on our Facebook page. Leave a comment, we'll put it up. The Commission of Inquiry into the 2013 Tongaat Mall collapse is set to continue this morning. You can also read more about the Luke Tibbetts murder trial. 3-year-old Luke was killed by crossfire during a gun battle in Westbury here in Johannesburg in August of last year. And of course, Zimbabwe's opposition movement for democratic change has criticized what they call President Robert Mugabe's crude and racist remarks against white farmers made at the statesman's 91st birthday celebrations. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also visit sabc.co.za/news for all the latest updates all of the time. Time for us to take another break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
This week we are taking you around the continent, telling you stories about what makes Africa, Africa.
We now head to the Kenyan coast, where we meet a man using needles to fight a growing drug culture.
A recent study revealed that there are 850 drug addicts in Diani alone, with over 220 using injectable drugs such as heroin.
In my community, I've seen a lot of these people suffer.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Motorists will see the first fuel price increase since oil prices recently hit a record low at midnight. The price of petrol will go up by 96 cents a litre and diesel by 74 cents. Paraffin will go up by 73 cents. The main reason for the fuel price hike is the average increase in the price of crude oil as well as the rand-dollar exchange rate. Social media users are still taking to Twitter and Facebook to share pictures of the Muizenberg fire that is now in its third day. Firefighters from other provinces are to be dispatched to the Cape Peninsula to help contain the blaze, where around 4,000 hectares have been burnt. Authorities have also warned that fires could take a few days to extinguish. The final results of Lesotho's poll could be known today. Prime Minister Thomas Mbane remains in the lead with 40 of the 80 constituencies won so far. Tabane's All Basotho convention is followed by the opposition, the Democratic Congress, who has won 33 constituencies. Remember, you can find all of these stories on Facebook. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Anine. Now, how safe is your child at school? Another video has been making the rounds on social media. The video shows a schoolgirl being slapped, shoved and kicked in the abdomen by two other pupils and has since gathered thousands of shares on social media. The video comes just a few weeks after another 4-minute long video involving school pupils surfaced. The victim tied by his hands and feet to a steel frame bed and raped with a broom. Over the years, cases of bullying have increased here in South Africa. A survey conducted by Pondering Panda revealed that as high as 40% of 13 and 14-year-olds identified bullying as a major problem in schools. As cases of bullying get more violent and both bullies and perpetrators are getting younger, today on Newsroom we ask, are we breeding a violent society? Now, to help answer this and more, we are joined from our studios in Cape Town by the CEO of Pondering Panda, Shirley Edie. A very good morning to you, Shirley. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Evan.
How big is the problem of bullying in our schools here in South Africa?
Evan, we've been tracking bullying for a while now. We did a big study in 2013 and again, hot off our sort of research press this February, we did another study amongst 5,000 learners in South Africa. And what we've seen is that the incidence of bullying seems to be remaining fairly stable, however at a very high rate. So more than 1 in 2 learners are reporting having been bullied in some way or another. That's either verbally, physically, or some kind of cyberbullying.
Now, your findings in terms of the figures looks really worrying. 40% is a high number. Is that accurate?
Well, according to our data, so we've been speaking to excluding deep rural students in deep rural schools. We speak to the cross-section of the population and amongst 5,000 young learners. It's in fact higher than 40%. That was a number quoted for just 13 and 14-year-olds. We spoke to 13 to 24-year-old learners across the country, across races and provinces, and that number sits at 55% of young people at school have experienced some kind of bullying. Now, the thing that sort of seems to be a little bit more concerning is that if you then pose the question, how worried are you about being bullied in some way or another, either verbally, physically, or again, cyberbullying in the future, that number jumps up to 70% of learners saying that they are very worried about it in one way or another in the future.
Why are we bullying each other then so much? Why is it on the rise here in South Africa? Is this a microcosm of where we are as a society? Is there too much violence on television, too much violence in our TV games? What is at the heart of it?
Evan, it's a great question, and I wish I could answer it. You know, we're not specialists on bullying per se. We conduct the research, so I can share with you some of the results of the research. Certainly what we've seen is that when we ask young people, who do you think should be doing more when it comes to helping with bullying in the country? Young people are saying not only should it be education officials like teachers and the principal, but also the police should be getting involved. It really indicates the severity of bullying from the learner's point of view. We also spoke to parents and family members of learners, and their response to that question was that parents and the community and siblings should be getting more involved in assisting educators with bullying. So it appears that, you know, a cross-section between education officials, the police, as well as communities and family members need to be working in an integrated way to address this in a serious manner.
What are the kids saying? Who do they feel should step in, especially at schools? Should there be a security element at schools if the numbers are so high?
Well, if you ask learners who they're currently going to when they are confronted with bullying of some kind, typically it's teachers and principals, both in the region of about 35%. Some of them are going to the police directly, that's about 10% of the sample, and even fewer going to share with their family or seek guidance or help from their parents or their siblings. That comes down to less than 10%. So when asked who they would like to see getting more involved, which is what I just mentioned, was the police, is something that they've said from a security point of view need to be stepping up security in conjunction with efforts by the school.
We see a lot of incidents now in the age of social media of girls getting in on the act, bullying, and we understand the competitive scenarios that play out in school, but is that a worrying factor that more and more girls are bullying each other?
Certainly, and what our numbers show is that in fact the incidence of bullying is consistent amongst young men and young women at school. So it is of real concern. We did explore the topic of the different types of bullying and what learners are perceiving as being the most problematic types of bullying at school. First, or what came up sort of tops in that for that question was verbal abuse. Secondly was some kind of physical abuse, so sort of being pushed or hit or beaten in some kind of way. And then third on that list came up was cyberbullying, so social networks, email, through the usage of the increased usage of cell phones. So we'd be very interested to see how that cyberbullying number tracks with time as the incidence of cell phones increases.
Let's talk about the positives. The picture is rather bleak, Shirley. Is there anything positive that came out of your report?
Well, certainly, absolutely, the picture is bleak. We did ask learners whether or not they thought that the problem was getting better, i.e. bullying was being reduced, or whether it was getting worse. And most learners said that they believed that it was getting better. However, the sort of bittersweet element to that was that when we asked the family members and the parents and the siblings of learners, perhaps with a slightly more objective perspective, their sentiment was different, suggesting that they believed that bullying was getting worse at schools.
Well, Shirley, I thank you for joining us today from Cape Town. That is Shirley Edie, who is the CEO of Pondering Panda, and they've released a report that talks about a higher percentage, as 40% of 13 and 14-year-olds identified bullying as a major problem in our schools. And it's up to us as parents of these young people to set the tone for our children in schools. It is unacceptable to have these high levels of bullying in our schools. What do you think? Why are our children turning to violence against each other increasingly? Is it the fact that our society is becoming more and more violent? Are we exposing our children to more violence on television? What is your view? At SABC Newsroom, you can send us your views, and we'll look at the bullying scenario that's playing out in the weeks and months to come, and we'd love to hear your views and your comments on it. I can tell you, of course, that South Africa, well, we're in a break at the moment. South Africa playing Ireland. They scored 411 for the loss of 4 wickets. It's a World Cup record. Makai Ntini and Alvaro Peterson were supposed to join me on the show here. Unfortunately, they're still in studio on our sister channel, stuck there with Cass Naidu giving their views. We'll try and get them in before the show, but let's have a look at some of the other big stories doing the rounds today. Of course, factionalism within COSATU, which is threatening to collapse the Labour Federation, is at the forefront once again. COSATU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi is boycotting the Federation's Central Executive Committee Summit, which began in Johannesburg yesterday.
In high spirits, determined to hold a meeting despite calls by its 8 affiliates to snub it, 8 COSATU affiliates dug in their heels, saying they won't participate in the Federation's meetings until NUMSA is reinstated. They are the Food and Allied Workers Union, SA Football Players Union, SA State and Allied Workers Union, Public and Allied Workers Union of SA, Democratic Nursing Organization of SA, Communication Workers Union, and the SA Commercial Catering and Allied Workers Union. NUMSA was dismissed from COSATU last year after it refused to back the ANC during the elections. In an unprecedented move, COSATU's Secretary General also stayed away from the meeting. This comes after all efforts by the ANC to unify the Labour Federation.
What I'm trying to communicate is that we can't pretend that we can just go on as if it is business as usual when we are dealing with extraordinary circumstances that are risking to divide the federation into half and divide each and every union that is affiliated to the federation into half.
An application by the new metal union, Limusa, into the fold of COSATU will also be considered by the Federation's Executive Committee. Montlengani Dipoku, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the outgoing president of Namibia, Hifikepunye Pohamba, has described as humbling his winning of the 50 million rand Mo Ibrahim Prize for African Leadership. The award is given to an elected leader who governs well, raises living standard, and then leaves office. Pohamba says he will use the money to pay for poor people to study agriculture at university.
Pohamba retires this month. The award committee noted that during his 10-year rule, he managed to improve the lives of his people, ensuring gender equality, higher literacy rates, access to treatment to over 80% of persons living with HIV/AIDS, as well as the introduction of social safety nets for the poor and persons living with disability.
During the decade of his presidential mandate, he demonstrated sound and wise leadership. At the same time, he maintained his humility throughout his presidency. He was deeply committed to the rule of law and to the respect for the Constitution, in particular on the issue of term limit.
The award, launched in 2007 by Sudanese tycoon Mo Ibrahim, has only been awarded 3 times. In other years, no retired president met the criteria, according to the committee.
The criteria are quite rigorous, and they are applied to everyone.
To win the prize, the leader must have left office in the last 3 years, been democratically elected, handed over power peacefully, and changed the lives of his or her people. Other winners of the prestigious award are former Presidents Joaquim Chissano of Mozambique, President Festus Mogae of Botswana, President Pedro Pires of Cape Verde, as well as President Nelson Mandela of South Africa, who got an honorary award. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
Well, Ireland are just about to start their reply to South Africa's 411 for 4. We're still waiting for Makai and Tini. Of course, that bundle of energy is on his way from the other studio. But let's take a look at your tweets quickly. What are you saying about South Africa's performance so far? Another world record. It was World Cup record, rather. William at Stella Williams says, "Viva the Proteas. Good work against Ireland. This is the best runs against. Good work, again, good work from the entire team." Yes, the entire top 6 chipped in with a contribution today. Of course, Quinton de Kock, unfortunately, was the one man who came short. Keegan Smith says, at official CSA, what a smack by the Proteas. First team to make 400 in consecutive World Cup matches. Proudly South African Protea fire. Yes, that is very much the case. That one from Keegan Smith. Acclaim says, who's next? Anyone? Question mark. SA versus Ireland. Well, Pakistan is next. Acclaim, and I can tell you they are a very hot and cold team. We play them on Saturday, but this game is not done yet. A corner says, hope this spells a warm-up for South Africa rather than an early peak. Yes, that is the case. And Nico van den Heever, well, we've missed Nico van den Heever. Our boys found their flow. The loss against India is what we needed. There we go. We have a couple of gentlemen that are coming in. Better late than never. There we are, looking rather special today. How are you, Makai?
We're fresh.
There we go, fresh. Makai and Tini and Alvaro Peterson is here.
Yes.
He's here with us. How are you, Alvaro? Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Makai. Always a bundle of energy. You're still wearing your pajamas under this beautiful jacket, man.
That's a good thing. If you come here at 9 o'clock, you're going to wear your pajamas at 8 o'clock.
Micaiah, we just see the innings starting there. Dale Steyn playing his 100th game. It's a big occasion for him, but you must be happy with the way we've gone so far.
I'm excited. You know, being happy is understatement. I think South Africa has been doing very well. They're in a good space. You know, they've taken away all the question marks out on top of their heads. Dale Steyn, it's up to him now.
Elvira, the one little question mark at the moment is at the top of the order. You've played there, you've batted there for many, many moons, it seems. Quinton de Kock's going through a rough patch. The critics are getting on his back a little bit. How do you get out of a slump on the biggest stage like the World Cup?
I think it's important for Quinton that, you know, he really stick to what he's doing well and what he has been doing well in the past. I always look at the top order as a unit, so I don't like to isolate players. And I think it's important that we have to look at South Africa as a unit, that the top four have been pretty good, certainly in the last year or two. And Quinton has been part of that structure. So it's important that, you know, when he gets his opportunity, he makes sure that he takes responsibility for the team. And yes, there will be critics on his back at the moment because, you know, you're not scoring runs. And people look at what the other guys are doing. AB is batting brilliantly. Hashim Amla's consistent as ever. Faf du Plessis scoring some runs now. And then David Miller, Rousseau, and JP Dumini has all been scoring good runs. So, yes, he's under pressure. But I think he has a big role to play for South Africa in this World Cup.
Micaiah, some people are saying Riley must bat at the top of the order and AB must take the gloves in the knockout stages. What do you say to that?
Don't rush. Do not rush. It could be a biggest mistake for us. But I think, you know, what Alvarez just said now. Let's wait. Try and get him. We know that he's under pressure. But one thing that we must not, you know, do it now to put him even more pressure on him. Let him relax. He mustn't think that he is not doing very well for the country. He's doing wonders. You know, we can say that for him to get out earlier, it's an open door for another one. But let's let him be what he knows, you know, what he can do his best.
Elvira, what do you make of the balance of the team today? We've got Farhan batting at 7. We've got a fifth bowler made up of what we would call rubbish in the old days, you know, and I think Farhan will be the first one to admit that him, AB and Faf would have to bowl 10 overs here today. What do you make of that?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to give Farhan an opportunity to showcase what he's about. He hasn't really come to the party with a bat because of our top 6 that is so powerful at this stage, and it's been doing really well in this World Cup. So what we have is we have Farhan playing as a batsman who can bowl a bit. In the last game, we already saw that, you know, they're trying to give Faf du Plessis an opportunity to bowl and get some overs under the belt because I think the makeup of the team is not quite certain. You know, when it comes to those big games, are they going to play Farhan? Are they going to play Riley Rousseau, an extra batter, and then try and give 10 overs to split between JP, Faf du Plessis and AB de Villiers? So there's still a lot of things that can happen. So I think from Farhan's point of view is that he must bowl as much as possible and South Africa must give him that opportunity to bowl. But having said that, you know, it's open to everyone. You know, if he doesn't come off or South Africa feel that his bowling isn't quite up there, you've got other options. You strengthen your batting and try and outbat the opposition then, and then use all these part-timers.
How do you win a World Cup, Micaiah? Do you win a World Cup with specialists? Do you give a guy like Wayne Parnell the new ball, as was the case as Martin Crowe asked for last week? Or do you go with bits and pieces and hope that you can get away with it?
You know, it's one thing. To win a World Cup, you can't be one man standing. You have to be a collective players. For me, I think there is time, you know, that South Africa is going to be very collective. All of them, they're going to click at the same time. Then they'll be able to win the World Cup. What we're seeing now, it's something that is due to come. You know, we can have all of those bits and pieces, you know, Amla getting 100, Faf getting 100, and AB de Villiers failing. You know, for me, to win a World Cup, it's every single 11 of them. When they take on the field, doesn't matter who bowls, doesn't matter who bat, as long that they are going there knowing that we are playing for ourselves.
The one thing that's always hangs over the South African team is the big C word. You know that, Elvira. It's something that, unfortunately, our public does not want to get rid of. Whenever we lose a game, whether we play well or not, the C word comes out, whether we've choked or not. You've been with the team until recently. How does that affect the players, the individuals, and then the groups?
Well, firstly, you know what, when you get into a position like that, where you get into a position of a quarter-final or semi-final of a big ICC event, that's when players feel the pressure. You know, I always relate it to if someone's been in an armed robbery. When you get to that same sort of position, you get tense and you know what happened. It's the same with South Africa. When we get into a quarterfinals, that's the only time that we can really get rid of it. So it's important that the players get themselves into that position and then realize that, you know, now is the time to get rid of it. You can't get rid of it before. You can't get rid of it during other series. You have to get rid of it in big ICC events, and I think South Africa's got an opportunity to do that. And for the public, the general public, it's just an easy word to throw around. You know, people watch with emotion. When we do well, they praise the team. When we don't do so well, you know, they select the team and call them all sorts of stuff. So it's important that we must also, as supporters, we must stay together, hang together, and make sure that we're proudly South Africans.
We win and lose together, but South Africa's a tough crowd, aren't we? We win very well, but we lose very badly. Isn't that the case, Makai?
We can say that again, you know, so that showed against India. But, you know, all in all, you know, it's one of those things. I'd rather see South Africa losing now than losing in the quarterfinal and semis.
Oh, guys, thank you for running across and coming into the studio to give us your opinions. Really much appreciated. Alvaro Peterson and Makai Ntini, two legendary cricketers here in South Africa, men that will be remembered for their contributions to the game. Let's hope that they bring us the rubber, the green in their blue outfits today, that we can go on and win this game against Ireland and make it into the knockout step. Not the best of starts. We've just missed a review showing there that it was going to hit Kyle Abbott. We decided not to review. Let's hope we don't. It doesn't affect us too badly. But there you have it. 7, 8, 9, looks like 11 for no loss after 2.1 overs now. That's where we're going to leave you. 411 for 4 is what South Africa scored in that game. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show then repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following day. We're also live on YouTube during the entire time, with the whole show available on demand all the time on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where myself and Makai Ntini, we love it in the morning.